Will you pray with me? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Episcopal priest and author, the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor, recalls meeting someone who'd been to South Africa to witness the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She writes, "He had all the usual admiring things to say about it, with one new piece of information. All the members of that commission are ill in one way or another," he said. "No one has survived the process with their health intact." Now, while a doctor might come to a different conclusion, this observer, who also happened to be a priest, is pretty sure he knows why the commissioners are all ill. The things they have heard have made them sick. She continues, "In their efforts to purge the soul of their country, they have listened to confessions so full of toxic material that their own health has broken down. They have encountered evil in such strong and unfiltered doses that their spirits have been deeply wounded, and the hurt has surfaced in their bodies. They have participated in the healing of their nation at great personal cost." Now, I can't claim to know for certain what the soul-body connection is when someone bears witness to deep, toxic pain, to evil, but I am inclined to believe it is real. It's been documented in psychiatric and medical studies, as well as in what we feel in our own lives. Trauma leaves a mark. And unprocessed trauma can show up in our bodies in ways that are hard to hide. In the book, The Body Keeps the Score, author and psychologist Besser van der Kolk describes how trauma can rewire the brain to keep it in a heightened state of alert and anxiety, a prolonged state of reactivity, and that can change the way our body functions. Stress raises our cortisol levels, which can lead to a number of health issues. And when we are chronically angry or scared, we experience constant muscle tension, which can create back issues and bone pain, digestive problems, and migraine headaches. Trauma also disrupts the physiology of our nervous system, leading to all kinds of syndromes, marked most often by chronic pain. Now, I want to be clear that there are myriad illnesses, including all the ones I've named above, that have nothing to do with internalized trauma. Our bodies are complex and delicate systems, and there's countless factors that can create illness. But what doctors are increasingly coming to realize, and human beings have known for eons, is that our minds and bodies are inextricably connected. And when one part absorbs pain, the other part will hold it too. I believe that our gospel story this morning points us to just such a reality. The bent-over woman is a powerful and provocative image. And her story always reminds me of someone who was one of the saints of this church. Many, many years ago, when I first came to the church in 2004, Gail Weed was already well into her 90s. Does anyone here remember Gail Weed? Yes, Allie, probably Elaine, Steve, Vivian. Well, the first thing you noticed about Gail was how tiny she was, and I mean tiny. And the second thing, which of course impacted the first, was that she was completely bent over. Her posture was like a question mark. All she could see was the 3 feet of ground that was right under her feet. Now, Gail was born in 1912 in Switzerland, and as a young woman, she worked as a maternity nurse. She emigrated to the States in 1936 as fascism and Nazism were a growing presence in Switzerland, and war was looming on the horizon all around. Gail never shared much about what spurred her to leave her country, but once here, she found a home and a husband and made a life for herself. Now, she never had any children of her own, nor did she continue her nursing career. She worked instead at a bank until she retired. She joined FCC in the 1950s and was very active in the Women's Guild for decades. After her husband died, she moved to a tiny third-floor walk-up apartment on Park Street. And even with her severe physical issues, she continued to get herself to the market and to the library and make her way to church with a little help from her friends. And Jim Donald, who's watching online, I know, was one of those friends. She loved visitors, and she would always serve these special Swiss cookies and tea whenever I stopped over. Gail was deeply spiritual and humble and joyful. She seemed simply delighted to be sharing another day with you. Each Sunday, as she slowly made her way to her favorite pew, which I believe is where Oliver is sitting right now, her face would beam out from under her turban, a deeply wrinkled smile revealing just a few teeth. And while she could only look down, she would gush over babies in their strollers and hold the hands of everyone who greeted her. Gail was clearly filled with love, and all she wanted to do was share it. Yet I believe there was something else that Gail was carrying. As the years went on and her body began to fail, she was moved into a local nursing home. Things soon turned critical, and I went to see her one Sunday after church. As I entered the home, I was struck by this sound of relentless and anguished screaming that was filling the hallway. I imagined it must be another patient, but I soon saw that it was Gail, tiny in her hospital bed. Her eyes were closed and her fists were clenched, and she was calling out again and again in anger or fear. I couldn't quite tell which, and I hardly recognized the woman that I knew. I asked the nurses if she was in pain, and they said they could find no source of it. She's been this way for hours, they told me, and we're at a complete loss as to how to quiet her or help her. I sat next to her bed and took her hand, and she held on so fiercely, and she continued her rhythmic screaming. I began to pray for Gail, and as I did, the image of the bent-over woman again came to my mind. I prayed that whatever weighed so heavily on her, whatever memory or trauma she was holding, would soon be lifted. I prayed for Jesus to put his hands on her shoulders and release her from all that she was carrying. I prayed that her cries were the sound of that kind of anguish departing her body, and that she would soon be free. And Gail died later that afternoon. Again, I don't claim any expertise in this. I don't know if the psychic weight that Gail carried in life was manifested in her painful posture or her anguished death. But I see her in the woman in our story today. And I believe that through this woman, Luke is offering us a powerful metaphor. You see, he describes the woman not merely as crippled, but crippled by a spirit. Her body is showing what's going on in her soul. While Luke gives us no details as to this woman's past, it is likely that trauma was a part of it. Her world was shaped by brutality and poverty. In Jesus' day, most folks lived at the very edge of survival. It would only take one bad crop or one unpaid debt or one illness to send you and your family over the edge. And women especially bore the brunt of this vulnerability. Voiceless, without agency, their lives and their children's lives were constantly at risk. And one cannot live for 18 years with this kind of psychic burden without it showing up somewhere, somehow. So when Jesus sees her walk into the synagogue, he sees this about her too. And his heart goes out to her. And he stops what he is teaching. And he takes hold of her hands. And he says to her, "Woman, you are set free." Not just physically healed, set free. And she stands up. Imagine this. For 18 years, she has been in bondage. Her vision, her world, limited to 3 square feet on the ground, not able to look up into the stars or gaze into a loved one's eyes or take in the beauty of a sunrise. And suddenly, all of that is open to her. What freedom, what liberation, what grace she must have felt. She had truly been healed, body and soul. But Luke doesn't end the story there, though, does he? You see, while this moment of divine liberation sets the woman free, Jesus gets jammed up with the lawyers. Right? It wasn't only the tyranny of Rome that was weighing on the people. The temple leaders placed a burden too. As so often happens in religions, the practices that start out as encounters with grace soon are bound up in laws and rules. And I think this set Jesus off more than anything. So much of his teaching, so much of his reframing of religion is that it should be a source of liberation, and especially the Sabbath practice. For 6 days, folks' lives are marked by toil and stress. So the Sabbath was created to offer one day of restoration and healing, a chance to remember that we are first and foremost beloved children of God, worthy simply because we are. The Sabbath space should be a place where we can bring our traumas, lay them down, and let God lift us up. But Jesus tells these temple leaders, it has been distorted into a practice that withholds God's grace from those who need it most. And Jesus isn't having it. Whenever our religions place more importance on keeping people in line and following the rules than on love and liberation, they become bondage. Jesus seeks to free everyone from oppression, whether personal, spiritual, physical, systemic. He invites us all to stand, to rise, to let go of our burdens and embrace the life that God has created us for and called us to live. And I believe that was true for the woman in the synagogue and true for Gail at the end of her life, and I know it is true for us now. Friends, we have all come here this morning weighed down by something. Every one of us. It may be obvious, or it may be hidden deep within. And when we feel unseen, or that we must carry our pain alone, when our trauma becomes the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, it will leave a mark. The body keeps the score. But here is the good news. You are seen. You are not alone. And you have another story, one that is written by God. And you have brought your story here to the right place. This is our Sabbath day and our Sabbath place. And so here now, together, we can lay aside the stress and the anxiety that mark our daily lives, the deep wounds, the chronic fear, the psychic pain, and know that God has not made us for that. Here we remember that Jesus sees us and knows us, places his hands on our shoulders, and invites us to stand up, to lift our eyes, to lift our hearts, and to live the life that God dreams for us. The life God dreamed for that woman in the synagogue and the life that God dreamed for Gail. For we are beloved, and no pain we can carry is larger than God's heart. We are made to be healed, to be whole, to be free. Today and always. May it be so. Amen.